Hello and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. I feel like I just posted one of these, but here we are again at the end of another month, and it's time to wrap up all the books I read in April. April has been one of the best reading months that I've had so far since I started reading again, rating wise. But to be fair, a lot of the books on the list are like reader favorites. So these have been read and reviewed and widely loved. And obviously, I knew that going into it. So I expected them to have high ratings before I picked them up. And I'm really excited to go through these with you. So let's get started. I read 7 books this month, and the first book I read was Bewitched by Laura Thalassa, and this book was absolutely amazing. I was completely enthralled by the story. I couldn't put it down, so much so that I went ahead and bought 2 more series by this author. It was absolutely a 5-star read, and book 2 of this, Bespelled, comes out at the end of May, and I literally cannot wait. This book follows our main character, Celine, who is a witch, and she suffers from a condition where every time she uses her magic, it steals one of her memories. So she's dealing with some excessive memory loss. She is trying to get accepted to Henbane Coven, which is an academy where she can learn her magic. And in order to do so, she needs to basically go on a quest and also find her familiar. So the adventure begins when she books her trip to South America to do her quest, and then while there, she accidentally sets free an ancient sorcerer named Memnon the Cursed, and he, when he wakes up, thinks that she is in fact his wife who cursed him. Some of the dialogue in this book is hilarious. Memnon is supposed to be this all-powerful sorcerer who threatens her for cursing him in the first place, but every word out of his mouth is followed by like, my queen, my empress, so he's still exercising proper etiquette while he's doing it, which is hilarious. And this book was a definite 5 stars. I highly recommend it. It was funny, it was clever, they had really great banter. I was just really, really into it. So highly recommend. That was the first book that I read this month. The next book I read in April was The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. And this is a relatively short book, but for some reason it took me a couple of days to get through this. And I don't know why, maybe it was my mood, but I wasn't like wanting to pick this up every day and just like kind of finish reading it really fast, because this feels like something that, you could probably get through in one day. It just felt like it dragged a little bit in some parts for me. But it wasn't like I wasn't into the story or the plot of this, because it was still really, really good. And I did end up rating it 4 stars, which I consider a very good rating. And I did end up enjoying this book. So this book follows our main character, Florence Day, who is a ghostwriter for a romance author. However, she's in a point in her life where she sort of stopped believing in love due to a bad breakup and is having a really hard time finishing the author's final book. So she meets with her new editor, Benji, to ask for an extension, and he denies it, but then suddenly her father dies and she has to go back to her hometown so she could be with her family and plan his funeral. This is definitely giving Addams Family vibes, because her family actually owns a funeral home, and she's always been like the town outcast because on top of that, like, she can actually see ghosts. This was definitely an interesting read. It's not very heavy on the romance, but it does have a lot of romantic moments, and I did really enjoy it. I just felt like some of the scenes were a bit too slow and it took me a few days to get through it, but overall it was good and I rated it 4 stars. Then I moved on to The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, and this is an interconnected standalone to The Dead Romantics. And some of the characters from The Dead Romantics are mentioned in this book, but you can still technically read this on its own without having to read that book first. It's not anything that would spoil the book. This book was really amazing. It was really sweet and romantic. It has magical realism. I absolutely loved it, and I rated it 5 stars. This story basically follows our main FMC, Clementine, who inherits a magical apartment from her aunt, and it basically has the ability to bring together people from different timelines, essentially 7 years apart, who are at a crossroads in their lives. So one day she comes home and there's a random guy there, Ivan, and he's apparently subletting the apartment from her aunt, but in his timeline, he's 7 years in the past. It's a story of self-discovery and getting back to who you're meant to be and what brings you joy. Because when they are together and doing what truly brings them joy, they are Ivan and Lemon. But when they're apart, they're James and Clementine. So I think the apartment brings them together when they're at their crossroads so that they can get back on the path that they're actually supposed to be on. And it also touches on hard subjects like grief and loss, and so did The Dead Romantics. And I thought Ashley Poston did a really great job with that. This was such a magical, complex, and heartwarming story. It was beautifully written, and I absolutely loved it from start to finish. So this was a 5 stars. The next book I read was Bride by Ali Hazelwood, and this is her first paranormal kind of fantasy romance book, and I was here for it. I absolutely love this book. It was another 5 stars. This is a werewolf and vampire story, and I absolutely love vampire werewolf stories, so I'll read that any day. I was so lost in the story, I forgot I was reading it. It had everything I love in a story: enemies to lovers, fated mates, he falls first, intelligent characters. It was absolutely amazing. This story follows the main FMC, Misery, who is a vampire. She agrees to marry the alpha of the neighboring wolf pack in order to secure an alliance between the vampires and the werewolves. Her hidden agenda is that she thinks she can find her missing friend by going into wolf territory, but she just finds so much more than that. Oh, it's just so good. I hope that this will be a series, and if it will be, I'm really excited because I can't wait for the next book to come out. I love this. The next book I read was Icebreaker by Hannah Grace, and this was a really cute and comfortable read. I really liked this book and rated it 4.75 stars and rounded up to 5 stars on Goodreads. This is definitely a favorite among the reading community, and I can see why. This story follows Anastasia, who is a figure skater, and her love interest Nathan, who is a hockey player. They're in college, and she's dealing with a difficult skating partner who ends up getting hurt, and Nathan steps in to help her train for her next competition. They are really sweet together. I loved their relationship. Nathan is super caring and protective of her, but not in a toxic way. I thought the communication was excellent throughout this entire book, and especially Anastasia, who learned how to communicate her feelings through therapy. And there was no silly miscommunications, which I hate in books. And there was a lot of discussion about difficult topics such as anxiety and eating habits and emotional intelligence, which I thought was very well done. Also, the friend group was great. I find that some books focus too much on the side characters, and I definitely didn't think that was the case here. I thought this book was actually kind of perfectly balanced between the main couple and the side characters. I ended up taking a 1/4 star off because of the epilogue, which made me feel like things got wrapped up a little too neatly, and also my least favorite trope was introduced there, so I would have been happier not reading that part. But overall, I really enjoyed it, and I'll be picking up Wildfire soon. I also read House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas, which is the second book in the Crescent City series and continues the story of Bryson Hunt. We also get introduced to a lot of new characters in this one and get a lot more of Bryce's brother Rune. He gets his own love story in this one, and I was really into it. I really love this book. I rated it 5 stars, and that is primarily because of the ending, because I was not expecting that. What happened was truly shocking. It was kind of insane, actually. If you know, you know. The beginning of this was kind of like the first half of House of Earth and Blood. It's very dense, full of information. There's a lot happening, and there are a lot of conversations. I didn't feel as connected to the cause of this book as I did to the cause in the first book. So for that, I was inclined to rate it more like a 4.5, 4.75, but the ending definitely made up for that, and I ended up giving it that full 5. Highly recommend this series, and I'm really excited to get to book 3, House of Flame and Shadow, in May. And then the final book I read in April was Reckless by Elsie Silver, and this was another amazing read. This is the 4th book in the Chestnut Spring series, and this one follows Winter, who is Summer's sister from the first book, and Theo, who is a bull rider and Rhett's protege, also from the first book. This starts off with Winter coming into town in order to repair her relationship with her sister. She spots Theo at a gas station. There's some attraction between them, and then they end up going to the same house for dinner, and their relationship escalates from there. This book has one of my least favorite tropes in it, which is accidental pregnancy, but for some reason, Elsie Silver did a really good job writing that, so I wasn't really cringed out by it throughout this book. And the internal dialogue of the characters is just so good. It's dual POV, so you get both Winter's and Theo's, and their internal dialogue is just so relatable, especially how Winter thinks about her insecurities and her backstory, which explains how she became the way that she is. It's not super deep. It's still a relatively light read, but I found it really relatable, and Winter came off as such a real person to me. I also really love Theo. He is such a golden retriever with a huge heart and a great sense of humor. Their banter and their jokes are great. The tension between them is good, and it was super emotional, like happy emotional, but I did admittedly find myself tearing up a little bit, especially during the beginning half of this book. It was another 5 star on Goodreads, 4.75 in reality because of the accidental pregnancy trope, but still I highly recommend this series. So that's it. These are the 7 books that I read in the month of April. I can't believe how many 5-star reads we have. And I'm really happy about it because I felt like I had been maybe a little bit in a reading slump a couple months before. And having so many 5-star reads in a row, or highly rated books in a row, really kind of made up for that. So it definitely got me out of a slump. And if you are in a slump, I highly recommend reading any of these books. Maybe not this one because you have to be in the mood to read this. So if you're in a reading slump, maybe not Crescent City because of the density and all the information, but a quick, fun, like romance, like Chestnut Springs or Icebreaker, even Bride and Bewitched, for fantasy books, I think they would help get you out of a slump. That was it. These are the 7 books I read. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for being here. As always, all my links are down below to my Instagram, Goodreads, and TikTok. Please like and subscribe. It would really help out my new channel, and I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.